So I'm not gonna do the thing where I start cursing right away because I don't know that I'm live or not. So I'm just gonna make the assumption that I'm live. And hello, are we live? We are live. All right. So hello, everybody. This is Jaime here with my Idaho friends, and working in conjunction with Argus Productions. You guys just saw Cody and Erica make some bomb-ass food. Looked amazing and delicious. Who doesn't want to have essentially dessert for dinner with coffee? I do. And I guess, when you create a pattern, you create a pattern. Delicious craft beer. This one brought to you by Barbarian Brewing New Wolf. And right now we are waiting to get connected with Drew. Drew Lorona of Treefort fame. Um, let's see here. Argus, do we have visual? And we have visual. I like it. Let's start the interview with a nice touch of the face. Drew, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Excellent. Awesome. Hey, brother. Thank you for making time for joining us today at my Idaho Friends. We got 30 minutes to talk about all the things, but the one thing that I really want to talk to you about is Treefort. So we're going to do a couple of questions, some stuff that is going to be, things that you have answered many and many times before, and then we're going to speed up and get some of the things we get to look forward as September comes nearer and nearer, which is the date in which Treefort got moved to. So, would you mind just telling the folks at home a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with Treefort? And cheers.
Yeah, so I am one of the founders of the festival, which started 9 years ago. Initially, we had set out just to try to bring better talent to Boise, and really our plan was to open a physical concert venue, but eventually the advice we got was just start doing shows, just start sort of identifying the interest in the community, build a reputation amongst agents, build a reputation amongst performers. And so we connected with someone in the community who had experience promoting shows, Eric Gilbert, who's now our festival director. And he had the
Nice.
idea, well, why spread out all that labor? Why not try a festival? He had sort of been brainstorming the idea to do a festival, capitalize on all the bands returning to the Pacific Northwest after that event. And so that's what sort of hatched Treefort. And we got a ton of positive feedback. And so what started out as a planned 2-day event immediately became just been growing.
Awesome. So I like that part, capitalizing on, the other festival, down south, and a few people have heard about it, South by Southwest. And then what you're saying is some of them are coming back, some of them are still nearby. It's just like a short drive and fly to Idaho. Let's go ahead and pull the trigger on this Treefort thing and see what kind of talent we can get. Um, what was it like that those first couple of years, and then we'll fast forward as to what it's like now, which is massive in my opinion. Still, you consider a smaller festival, but when you're here during Treefort, which I know I'm a big fan of, like, the whole town, the whole city is involved. What was that like in the very beginning? Attendance numbers and the number of bands that were involved.
So the first year we had 185 bands, I believe, which was pretty crazy considering we had initially set out to do something, we were thinking like 20, 30, couple of days. And so attendance, what's kind of rough is because we were all green and we had never done anything like this before, we did not initiate the best record keeping. So the attendance for the first several years, things like that, we just didn't do a good job of tracking our data. I would say first couple of years was probably 3 or 4 thousand people. Um,
Okay.
Probably more on like the weekends. Friday night and Saturday night are big nights for us. Um, so it's kind of funny because we when we sort of grew up, we switched ticketing companies and really started tracking our attendance and tracking our data and seeing what tickets were selling, what tickets weren't selling, trying to offer affordable options for families and for people on a budget. So as we got better at putting on events, we sort of identified that we had to get better at running a business too. So that's kind of when we started seriously tracking sales and attendance numbers as opposed to just being a bunch of kids trying to throw a party basically.
Right. And I'm so glad you brought that up because I wanted to touch a little bit on that. It's the business aspect of it. So, you know, somebody that might be watching or already familiar with Treefort, it's just off the back of their head, it's just like a big ass party. But, it's a very well organized big ass party. Would you mind talking a little bit about what your role is within Treefort and what the roles are for the rest of the OGs along with you for the festival?
Yeah, so my day to day is basically business development, fundraising. So I run a small team that coordinates all the sponsorship revenue for the festival. So that takes up the lion's share of my time is having meetings and then the creative work behind creating the activations for these sponsors. Because Treefort's not a nonprofit, all the support we get from
Right.
businesses is a transaction. It's a marketing expense for them. So we have to come up with ways to uh, deliver insights or connections that those sponsors are looking for. So that's the majority of my time. I also run all the sales side of the festival. So the ticketing and the box office operations are also in my purview. I have a really talented team that has been with the festival for many years now that help me with that. So I'm less, I don't have to respond to every email requesting a ticket transfer or a refund like I
Right.
did 7 years ago. Um, so those are my main two like day to day projects. And then all the founders on the festival meet weekly just to have sort of high level discussions on strategy and vision. And the other founders, about half of us are still operational. So our
Mm-hmm.
marketing director and our festival director are active, and then our assistant festival director has also been on the leadership team for many years. And the rest of our leadership team is people who sort of skirt the line between operational roles and more of like a traditional board member role, where they're less
Uh-huh.
involved in the day-to-day activities. Our primary founder, and the person who financed the festival, she kind of has a foot in both sides. She runs kind of the finances of the event, um, and sort of acts as a chairman of the founding board, I guess is what you would call it. We call it a leadership team. We strive to not use like corporate terminology whenever possible because we do rely a lot on volunteers and a lot on community support. So we try to keep our hierarchy labeling as horizontal as possible.
A team environment, and that's I'm so glad you brought that up. We're totally connecting over here, Drew, because not everybody gets to work over more than just one single handful of years and create something out of nothing because you know looking back, ballpark figure, you have in attendance, what I think you mentioned, 3,000-4,000 people as to, what you're looking at nowadays, just in the last handful of years is significantly larger. So to start a project like this with your friends and then being able to maintain said relationships and then also maintain a good professional relationship speaks volumes of how you guys go about conducting business together. All right, because it's one thing to start a fun project with each other, and then next thing you know, it's like, okay, so we have what you mentioned, 180 bands or 130 or whatever in the beginning, and now you're looking at 500 plus bands, and everybody wants to be involved in one way or another. If somebody cannot afford to be a sponsor, there's going to be 10 other people behind them wanting and willing to be a sponsor no matter what. So that's pretty cool. Looking back in the beginning, and again, we'll fast forward a little bit. Back then, the festival was just a festival, or was it already, getting close as to what we know it as right now? And the reason why I'm asking that is because during the time when the festival started, I wasn't even in the country. I didn't even know what Treefort was, and I'm still surprised now that I've been back here like the last 5 years. There's people here in Idaho that do not know what Treefort is. So back then was just music, but nowadays, you have a number of partnerships. Just not to take any thunder away from you, but you got Story Fort, you got Hack Fort, there's L Fort. Will you go a little bit over, that growth and how different it was back then as it is right now?
Yeah, so first you said something in that conversation there, like we actually have had to do a lot of growing as a team. We've had our ups and downs, and we actually did some leadership training a couple of years ago that was really helpful, and it allowed us to grow a group of friends and sort of inexperienced people to actually like treating this like a business, which it had become. And so the leadership training was
Mm-hmm.
really beneficial. Like I kind of rolled my eyes at it at first, but leaning into it and engaging with it actually became really, really helpful. And we overcame personal roadblocks that seemed impossible to overcome. Like we had gotten to the point, and some of us are like, we're so close, we're basically like siblings. And siblings fight and siblings argue. And we were getting to the point where we would get into these scuffles as friends that would have lasting impact as business partners. And so we engaged in this leadership training, and it like basically completely changed how we work together. And so
Awesome.
that growth was happening personally. And then, like you mentioned, the festival began as a pretty straightforward concept of music, and music often goes hand in hand with alcohol, whether people like that or not. So Ailfort was part of year one as well. And then that has since
Oh,
grown into what we call forts, which are members of the community basically approaching us and saying, "I'm really passionate about this. I have an idea. Would you indulge that idea?" And after some vetting and internal discussion, we bring people on board and let them try their concept. And if the concept has enough legs with the community, it becomes a fort. So, like you were mentioning, now we have Hack Fort, Food Fort, Ale Fort, Yoga Fort, Story Fort. Drag Fort became an official fort this year. So we keep adding forts based on the passions of what the community wants to rally around. We're
well,
any reason for people to gather and celebrate something, we try to give that a platform at the festival. um, that's hard. It's hard to draw a line with what fits
yeah.
Treefort and what doesn't, but we try to at least have coffee and talk through every idea that gets pitched. So And as the festival has grown, we've had to say no to some ideas, and that have been good ideas, and we've had to say yes to ideas that turned out to be incredible hit. So it's like you never know.
Yeah, I think if I recall when I moved back to Idaho a few years ago, and I remember I think Yoga Fort mostly takes place over at the Jump Building, and you cannot fit another single soul while Yoga Fort is taking
Yeah.
place. You'd be like, oh, I guess everybody does yoga. And you have kids, I have kids, and but mine are toddling around. So we'll share in this skid for it, and it's just brilliant. It's more than just a bunch of cardboard boxes, but there's just this really cool aspect of I want to go enjoy the festival, but it's not going to be just music and drinking beer all the time. I can implement my family into it, go and pull them on the wagon around downtown and get into like build some cool stuff and attend like games with other kids, and there'll be a storytelling portion and there'll be books and whatnot. So I think that's pretty awesome. Um, so I love like personal and professional development, and you were touching, how you guys as a team and as as a business decided, to get some coaching. Who do you guys go to for that?
We went with this firm that I believe is no longer um, practicing, but they were called Abby Louie. And
Okay,
I think that I can actually, like, if you want, or not, I'm sorry, that's not accurate at all. It was called Louie Robertson. Abby Louie is one of the partners, and she's actually still practicing coaching in the Treasure Valley. Um, so I can
nice.
share the info with you if there's like a Facebook feed or something you want to put their contact info out there. But
Oh,
yeah,
dude,
Louis
absolutely.
Robertson
So
was
yes,
the partnership at the time, and it was a totally great experience.
yeah, this is a major investment. And it clearly is paying off. Do you guys I guess how do I ask? Do you guys continue to meet with her or part of the team, even though they're not together, in order just kind of to reinforce those things that you guys learned and practiced, some years ago? Or has it just been just the one time, one shot, one kill, and you guys are just taking it from there?
So it's pretty cool. So the partners were Abby and a gentleman named Steve. And Steve, I believe, went and he left coaching and went and pursued another career direction. But what was really cool was we wanted to do a follow up um,
Right,
to our
that's what I meant to
coaching
say.
session.
Follow
So
up.
our coaching session lasted like 6 weeks or something, but we wanted to do a follow up a year later, and so he like came out of retirement, so to speak, to like do one last rodeo, and they did a follow up like half day session with our team and sort of worked through Steve and Abby worked through this this project to its completion with us, and sort of had like a year in review kind of session over lunch, and so we were able to kind of give each other feedback, talking about what goals we had set and whether we had met those goals or not. So it was pretty cool that even though their practice together had sort of come to its conclusion, that they came back and like worked with us one last time. It just goes to show that like people are passionate about their work here, even if it's
Yeah,
not like you can find almost anything, and I feel like, go that little bit of extra mile, 'cause you become on a first name basis, and so it's like helping out a friend.
that's pretty rad. So is it safe to assume then that there was the original 6 week session, then there was the year in review session, a year later? Has there been any follow ups ever since, or have now it's just kind of you guys alone and unafraid?
So now, I mean, it is definitely like pushing the baby bird out of the nest kind of thing. Like now we have the vocabulary and the skills to sort of self-diagnose problems when they arise, and we use language that we developed through that experience with each other more openly. Um, and it's
Mm-hmm.
easy to fall into old habits. You know, we definitely like pinpoint moments when we sort of regress, but because we went through that coaching, it it's easier to identify the old habits forming, and you know, sort of trim that growth off and keep things going in the right direction.
All right, super curious, and this will be the last leadership type time. I'm just fascinated by the whole thing. So I gone through some training, and there's been a number of different leadership capacity roles that I've been in, and training that I've taken a part in. Was that the time when you guys were working, with this teaming? Were you guys able to create, a vision, identify, values as a team, what the values are for Treefort, and then adjust as to what the yearly goals are going to be? Or was there anything like that at all?
Yeah, so it started as kind of a interpersonal learning individual leadership skills. And then when we figured that bit out, we transitioned into how do you set some goals as a team? How do you set goals for other people? Um, and I'll be honest, it's hard with organization like Treefort that is so, uh, it's sort of like an aspen grove, right? Like a bunch of separate trees with the same root system. Like it's not a hierarchy. We have leadership, but ideas come from everywhere. And so it's hard to get a vision that is too specific, other than like
Right.
we have a saying that has become a mantra, which is Treefort is for everyone. And we also just very strongly value community, which that phrase sort of comes out of. And so um, we tend to just use that, you know, we haven't we haven't specifically like written down a set of commandments that make Treefort what Treefort is, but we all sort of know that when a decision needs to be made, we need to make that decision in the best interests of the entire community, not just what might be good for us as the 4 or 5
Right.
people that own the festival.
That's beautiful. I love it. I love it because had you guys written something down, it would have been a living document that would have required for you guys to update on a continuous basis. So that's really rad. Thank you for sharing that. That definitely scratched an itch for me as far as what we were talking about.
Sure.
Well, we're at 6:18 right now. Let's talk a little bit more about present day and what holds, like what the future is looking like. Um, right now, of course, everybody, is taking, is dealing, with the hits of the current, global pandemic. Treefort, just about like any other event or anything that is happening all around the world, was canceled because we cannot have people close together. Don't want
Postponed.
anybody to get sick. Postponed and pushed to what date again? When in September?
September 23rd through the 27th.
Beautiful. So I guess the first question, and it might seem like a silly question, but will there be a Treefort? I mean, you said postponed, but there's so many unknowns. As of right now, there will be a Treefort in those dates.
Yeah, so we got really lucky in that we had our event was very close to when a lot of this uncertainty started to really emerge as like a, a change catalyst in like locally and all over the world. So why
Yeah.
that benefits us is we had we had sold a lot of tickets and we had not yet had to pay a lot of our uh, big expenses. So we were
Mm.
in a very good spot because we had, we basically, when this started coming down, we had a meeting and we said, what can we afford to do and what can't we afford to do? And postponing just started to look really good. And the bands were interested,
Right.
bands were starting to cancel tours, other concerts were getting canceled, and a postponement really, like, it gave people a lot of hope. The time frame was long enough that we thought that we were allowing for a lot of uncertainty to still run its course, and we knew we had enough money. We trusted our fans to not, if we trusted that not every single person would ask for a refund, and we made a decision to offer refunds
Right.
for a week for people that thought they needed the money. um, and most of our fans kept their tickets, and we're in a pretty good financial spot, and we actually applied for one of the PPP loans as part of the bailout. And I would encourage every small business to look into that, because we're gonna take part in, little Treefort Music Fest in Boise, Idaho is gonna take part in this bailout, and it's going to help us make it to September and make the festival happen. So I'm feeling really good about where we're at, because like I said, we got lucky in that all of the wave was breaking, ready to make a choice. And a lot of events that happen later in the spring, they had a tougher decision to make, because is it going to open back up or is it not? That, and for us, it was like, it's almost riskier to do an event where 20% of your people don't show up because they're concerned. Having a
Oh my
having a
gosh.
poorly
Yeah.
attended event is more financially ruinous than postponing an event to a time when it's going to be a success. So you want to
Yeah.
do, if you can afford to do it, you want to do it so that people feel good about the experience, that they're not nervous, they're not staying home out of insecurity or worry that it's going to flare back up. So it's really like, and that being
Yeah.
said, we don't know how this is going to go, and if this goes for 6 more months, I think a lot of small businesses are going to be in trouble, not just Treefort. So um, we, at a certain
Yeah.
point, we just have to sit
There's a
back
lot of
and like
unknowns.
and like ride the snake a little bit, and just like trust that we can pull through as a society. Because at the end of the day, like,
No,
you know
yeah, business ownership is a risk. All right, whether it's a brick and mortar, whether you're talking about a music festival, whether you're talking about e-commerce, you're taking a risk. All right, so anytime that you are going to open up a business, whether it's by yourself or with with some awesome friends, you're rolling the dice. That people are going to want to consume your product, that they're going to buy your services, and they're going to see the value proposition as to what you're bringing to the table. The same way, that if you decide that you're gonna wanna like purchase a rental property, well, I don't make any money if like somebody doesn't move in there. It's all a give and take, and I like the position that you guys are in. Right now, everybody's concerned, of course, about the pandemic. Different parts of the world are going to experience different spikes. And I talked directly with um, Dr. Tom Kaufman, who happens to be my father-in-law, who happens to be one of the handful of infectious diseases doctors in the state, and who we're going to do an interview with him next week, next Monday, actually, exactly a week from now. And that's going to be one of the questions. When are we going to experience or spike here in Idaho? Because it's going to be different everywhere else. And the most important question: when do we think that second spike is going to happen? But I completely agree with you, Drew. I think definitely postponing the festival and maintaining it and keeping it and believing on the value proposition that you guys bring to the city. I mean, just oh man, we're running out of time. I got so many more questions. Ballpark figure, like what does it look like as far as like our local economy when Treefort is taking place? What does that do for downtown? What does that do for the city? Ballpark figure, money wise.
So we did the Boise Convention and Visitors Bureau helped us do a economic impact study um, last year, and they estimated it around, I think, $40 million of economic impact, which is pretty sweet for a 5-day event where you're looking at the same attendance. Like we have an attendance estimate of about 30,000 people. That is a
Okay.
underattended Broncos football game. So the same amount of people that go to one Boise State game bring $40 million of economic impact to Boise, and part of that is it's a 5-day event. It's more like going on vacation than it is going downtown for a night. So people
Right.
people get hotel rooms, they eat out every meal, they shop more, they spend more time at other downtown businesses. So it's a pretty big deal, and that's why my heart goes out to a lot of these service industries downtown. Is it's a big deal to a lot of people. There's a lot of
Right.
uh, there's a lot of service industry and gig economy workers that depend on events, and not even just events, but like nightlife and socializing in general, that
Yeah.
have been hit really hard by this. um and so that's a big part of why we were like, we have to postpone. Like we have to provide a light at the end of the tunnel, not just for attendees, but for the bands and the bartenders and the cooks and everyone that, like, big events and active downtown are a big part of how they maintain their livelihood. So that's when it's sort of one of those things where, like, the second this thing eases up and the second we get the all clear, I think that you're going to see this crazy, almost like carnival like atmosphere when people finally get to like go out and see each other and
Oh
talk and
yeah.
hug and dance again. You're going to
I
see
I
this
agree.
crazy, opening of the floodgates where suddenly, like, people who haven't been to a concert in 20 years go out just because they want to see and be around other people.
No, yeah. So for those of you at home watching, Drew and I don't live that far from each other, and we get together with another group of friends and do friend stuff. And I'm already here, just kind of like, when is it gonna come the time to get out of here? So yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm sure everybody's just it's gonna be like a carnival. So we are almost out of time. Two quick questions, and just bear with me to try to answer them as quickly as you can. What is it looking like as far as the number of bands that are going to be coming in September? And I know that can change. There's some time. Just ballpark figures, cool. And then two, which one are your top three?
Okay, so most of the bands, because a lot of the tours that were happening this spring also got postponed, we got the majority of our bands back, which is really
Nice.
cool. Um, we have we got lucky there too, in that a lot of the performers that we book at Treefort are smaller independent acts, they're regional bands, so they're just as eager as anyone else to get back to the way things were. And so when we did the postponement, we were met with a ton of support. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had more bands in the fall than we announced this spring. We already announced some bands, and the response we got was incredible. As far as my top three acts, so I have a plug just for a local band called the Seatopians. They just a group of young guys, and they do like instrumental surf rock to old Godzilla movies, and it's really entertaining. Maybe
That's awesome.
It's the type of thing where you might not sit at home and listen to that music, but you're gonna have a great time at the show. And they're local, so you don't need to go to Treefort to catch them.
That was like when Mega Ran showed up. Like, I never listened to Mega Ran, and it's like,
yeah, exactly. It's one of the, like, that's what Treefort's all about, is like a good live show. We watch YouTube videos of bands performing live, because an album only tells you so much. So
right.
Then I would also encourage people, another band that I would say is something to maybe dig into further is Joshy Soul. He filled in as a headliner last year. He's played in Boise a couple of times since then. He's an incredible party. Again, it's his music is actually great recorded and live, so there's no reason to wait on him. And then our headliner, Chromatics, is also incredible. And that's another album that you can just sit at home, like, get the vinyl, relax, put your headphones on, and enjoy until Treefort swings around again in September.
Good. That is awesome. Drew, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for going back down memory lane, explaining the roots of Treefort, going into details about what the business is. My Idaho Friends is all about talking about local businesses, business owners, and their style of leadership and their impact within the community. And clearly, you guys are tremendously impactful. And as a big fan of Treefort, I cannot wait for September to come around so we can go and party all together. Also, many thanks to Justin and Erica from Argos Productions for allowing me to have my Idaho Friends here on Argos TV, their platform. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. And to follow up on something that Drew mentioned, as far as you're a business owner or an individual, taking advantage of the government program right now, especially if you're a local business owner. A great source of information is the COVID-19 page on the Boise Metro Chamber of Commerce website. Just run a quick Google search, and there's going to be a great deal of information. More than likely, everybody, hopefully, knock on wood, has applied for it. But if you have not and you still have questions, that's a great source of information for you in the local level. Again, also thank you for Barbarian Brewing for making delicious beer. Been slamming those, and Lost Grove and Burr Island and White Dog and Meriwether Cider, and goodness gracious, am I gonna go dizzy with all the beers I'm drinking here at home? Not all at once. I still need to get some within moderation. Good. I'll hook you up. And with that, I bid you all goodbye. Hey, Idaho, stay frosty, stay safe, and whenever you get a chance, continue to be kind to each other. Thank you very much, Andrew, and we'll see you later.